The fact that Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is at least watchable is something of a minor miracle. Here you have a sequel that has to somehow live up to the only DCEU movie to break $1 billion at the box office, is surrounded by reports and rumors of unwatchable screen tests and extensive reshoots, has open indifference from its leading man Jason Momoa, and somehow got wrapped up in Amber Heard's legal drama, complete with alleged threats from Elon Musk. And as the cherry on top, it's the last of the 4 2023 DCEU releases that was effectively orphaned by Warner Bros. Discovery when James Gunn and Peter Safran's DCU plans were rolled out back in January. But in spite of all of that, I can't say it's a train wreck. It's not nearly as offensive as The Flash or Shazam 2, and it's nowhere near as boring as Black Adam. But it lacks the epic scale and goofy blockbuster energy that propelled the original forward. In some respects, it has a closer resemblance to the Marvels or Quantumania, in that what made it on screen is clearly a stitched-together version of at least 3 different cuts of the movie. The story is set a few years after the original. Arthur Curry and Mira are now married and have an infant son, Arthur is struggling with his role as King of Atlantis, and Yahya Abdul-Mateen's Black Manta still wants revenge on Arthur for letting his dad die in the last movie. And while Manta's setup as a villain was one of the original film's highlights, that quickly gets pushed aside when he finds the cursed Black Trident and is slowly possessed by a dead Atlantean king who wants Manta to free him and his horde of undead merpeople, though that somehow winds up not being as interesting as it sounds. Arthur decides the best way to stop him is by freeing his brother, Patrick Wilson's Ocean Master, so they can team up. And while that might sound like Thor the Dark World, don't worry, nothing in this movie is as boring as Malekith. The movie actually starts to work once Momoa and Wilson are on screen together, as they slip into the buddy cop dynamic pretty easily. Wilson plays everything completely straight, while Momoa gets to have fun playing up his buff man-child persona. There's even a fun little scene where they get to go to an underwater version of a seedy nightclub in order to get information out of its fish mob boss owner. I wish the movie was this wacky the whole time. Unfortunately, after that, you can pretty much map out how the rest of the film will go. There's bickering between the brothers, there's an all is lost moment involving Arthur's infant son, and we get a big climactic fight in the titular Lost Kingdom. There's plenty wrong with the film. It heavily relies on ADR, flashbacks, and montages in an attempt to keep the story coherent and only kind of works. Also, the big bad doesn't wind up being nearly as threatening as you might think. As for the Amber Heard question, it feels like the studio tried to have it both ways. She has maybe half a dozen lines of dialogue, her direct interactions with Momoa are kept to a minimum, and she gets written off for a good chunk of the movie when she gets attacked by Black Manta. But there's a good chance audiences won't notice it. Nicole Kidman gets a similar treatment, and Willem Dafoe didn't even bother to show up this time. But it is jarring if you remember just how big of a role she played in the first one. Look, it's almost Christmas, and there's plenty of other movies coming out if you and the family want to go to the theaters over the holidays. Take the kids to see Wonka, they'll love it, and go see The Iron Claw if you want something a little more serious. Spending 2 hours to watch this won't be the worst thing in the world, but you'll likely forget about it in a week. After all this time, the DCEU goes out on a meh. See you next time.